really putting in work so far this tournament. Coming as third seed, that's, you know, you always want to be nice and high up, but I really like the team. I really like the Kartana myself.
Yeah, I like Kartana as well. Kartana was one of the grass-type Pokemon that I was using in my own Fire, Water, Grass core as a part of the Zacian Kyogre team, and it's just a really great Pokemon because it makes a fantastic Dynamax, and it's going to be great to see how Aaron decides to use that Pokemon in this matchup if he decides to bring it. But take a look at the accomplishments. Aaron Traylor, another one of our top competitors from before we took a break, being the Dallas Regional Champion, and I remember that one being so exciting as Aaron Traylor really put a name to Gigantamax Charizard in that particular tournament.
The first Sword and Shield Regional we had, he took it down with aplomb. Lots more achievements that don't quite fit onto the screen here. He's been playing a really, really long time, moving up through the seniors division. So a wealth of experience is what you need when you get towards the top tables, and of course the top cut tables. World's performances, regional performances, really, really top player, and he's bought a top team. We'll dive into that a little bit more. The Kartana, I think, is really going to be essential in a number of matchups. I'd like to talk to him maybe a little bit later about how that's been playing out over the course of the day, but I've been thinking how many people have left a grass type and how many people have been run over by something like a Gastrodon. That answers that really well, and if he's run into Gastrodon all day yesterday, he's probably feeling pretty good. Going with the Zacian Kyogre, though, that we haven't been able to look at so much because a lot of people leaving it on the bench.
Yeah, absolutely. So like having a grass type is certainly necessary, but we'll see how necessary it is against Z's team. This is Z Costagliola. Very excited to be able to welcome them to the stage here and take a look at what their accomplishment list is. 2020 Knoxville Regional finalist. And so that means that they've seen Chungjin before as well.
They've definitely had some good regional performances to build from as well. 2018, 2019, and 2020. More recent years than maybe some of Aaron's achievements, using that more recent momentum to push themselves forward. And you've made a regional finals, you just always want to go that one step further. As you mentioned, definitely seen Chongjun as well, could be interesting, but looking at the bracket, would only meet in the finals. The team, something that I know people were talking about yesterday was the lack of Regieleki that we had seen, but we're going to get it featured on this team. And the Regieleki, the Landorus, certainly something a little bit different. The Zacian Eviltal as the restricted duo as well. They've brought a really good team, and they've been capitalizing, I think, on a number of different options that this team has and ways to play.
And I really like this particular Regieleki because we have seen physical Regieleki running around. We've even seen it on previous teams in our top cut and as well as some of our top competitors yesterday. And so this one is a little bit safer. You know, it's kind of going back to basics. It still has a couple of interesting techs. And so whether or not those do come into the fold of this battle, it remains to be seen. But the rest of the team as well, pretty standard. But I really do like the inclusion of the Amoonguss as well, just to be able to give you something to play around with in case you are going to be going up against a team that is a little bit slower and might use something like a Trick Room mode.
That's certainly an option for Aaron's team. I would be scared if I was the Kyogre because of the presence of Regieleki as well.
Yeah.
That is just such a hard thing to maneuver. And it comes back, yes, there's not a Groudon on the board. You don't have to maneuver for weather. You just have to maneuver to be away from Regieleki. And that's going to be very, very key. I think in Z's case, they've got to find the opening, and when can Regieleki really capitalize? Yes, it beats the Kyogre, but it doesn't do quite as well against the rest of the field. Could be an angle to maybe try and throw out some Electro Webs, gather up that speed control. Kartana is very fast, so yes, if you could maybe slow that down and then catch it with, say, the Incineroar, really what you want to be doing in this one. So the matchup here could really go either way. I don't think there's a clear favorite just on paper. We will, of course, figure that out when we get into game, though, and get a little more information on how they're playing the team.
Absolutely, and we're going to jump into game very shortly and find out the leads for this game number 1. Let's see what Z has brought to the table. It's going to be Amoonguss and Regieleki to kick things off here, and then Aaron will be answering with Incineroar and Zacian.
This is an old school lead. I mean, not old school, it's still in the last couple of years, but just in the Regieleki and the Amoonguss together, you buy so much time just by, you know, redirecting attacks away, and that I think is really important. You don't really get bothered by the Intimidate either, so really not the prime position for Incineroar to capitalize on its ability. You want that Intimidate to be going into something like the Landorus, for example. So Regieleki could just buy some time here and throw down the Electro Webs, take away the speed that is so important to a Pokemon like Zacian, and open up something for a little bit later in the game. On the flip side, looking on Aaron's team, a nice stable kind of lead. The Zacian and Incineroar goes really nicely together. The Incineroar can buy a little bit of time with the Fake Out, you know, throwing down his Intimidates, and the Zacian, you know, is just going to be able to throw down that damage with Behemoth Blade. There's no real answer to stop it. So both players in a very neutral position right now need to carve out that early advantage. And just looking at the board, there's, you know, one supportive Pokemon and then one kind of really offensive threat. It's going to be about who capitalizes on that first.
Double Protect here coming out from Z, trying to bait out a potential Protect or, a Fake Out that Aaron has locked into for that Incineroar. And we will see a Sacred Sword as a follow-up. But that Double Protect, really smart to just kind of feel out, you know, what is going to be happening here, and also protecting a potential Focus Sash on that Regieleki.
If they're unsure about where the targeting is going to be going, Double Protect is the play. You get to learn a little bit about what Aaron was thinking and where the attacks were going, and of course which attack from the Zacian as well. So thinking about it, the Double Protect does slow you down a little bit. It's guaranteed, or not guaranteed, but very unlikely you're going to be able to protect again in the following turn. So the momentum sort of slows down a little bit, and you've got to make an informed decision on your switch if that's what you're going for, or a really well-informed decision on your attack.
Well, Zacian switching out in favor of the Whimsicott, and we will see Amoonguss go for a Rage Powder just to draw some attention away from the Regieleki, as Regieleki goes for a Thunderbolt, landing into the Whimsicott, taking it to about half HP, but also paralyzing it.
That's not what you want to see. The Whimsicott coming in, probably to try and, you know, it answers the Amoonguss very well. If the Zacian was going to get Spored, for example, the Whimsicott doesn't mind about that. But just coming in and getting paralyzed, yes, it's usually using Prankster moves, so that doesn't matter as much, but the chance to be fully paralyzed and not use any ability could certainly be an issue. The Incineroar leaving the field with a Parting Shot probably wants to come in against something that actually relies on its attack stat rather than its special attack. Definitely going to be important for later. But now Aaron gets to make a very quick pivot to say, okay, I got the Whimsicott in, I can set up with that in the following turn, and I can already get a partner in that can capitalize off it immediately. In this case, the Zacian, the Whimsicott coming in as well, basically says, if you're going to start electro-webbing me, I can immediately counteract that with a Tailwind.
Yeah, you run into a bit of a problem, though, that if the Tailwind expires, you still have the speed stat drops from those electro webs, but usually in that amount of time, you are still able to accomplish so much that those don't end up mattering anymore, or you can pivot out your Pokemon to get rid of those. But we'll see a Helping Hand instead. No paralysis this time around. And now Zacian is going to be able to do some big damage, hopefully to that Amoonguss, who does go for the Rage Powder there.
It's got to be the Amoonguss. The Regieleki's getting away with this for a little while, but just wearing down the Whimsicott, actually. Clearly identifying that as the more annoying and important Pokemon to the matchup.
Behemoth Blade now from the Zacian. Let's see how much it's going to be able to do to this Amoonguss. And it is going to be enough to get the knockout. Helping Hand really pushing that over the edge. And so that Amoonguss is also no longer a threat. Some big support off the table for both of these trainers. But
both trainers remaining with their offensive threat down. And in this position, I really do think that the Zacian's just a little bit safer. The Regieleki's not hitting anything super effective. Double Incineroar's coming in. I think we could be in for a slow turn where we just exchange for a little bit.
Yeah, Fake Out pressure on the table for both of our players, and the Intimidate, more importantly for Z, being able to drop the attack of this Zacian as well to neutral. So
taking away the boost on the way in is always nice, and I think that's really important. And Aaron hasn't been able to capitalize on Intimidate yet. I know it's a small detail right now, but that could be a difference maker as we go through the game. We haven't had any Dynamax though, and it's finally time to get one of those big Pokemon on the field to try and capitalize. I don't imagine it's an Incineroar, but the Regieleki is here. Dynamax Regieleki genuinely scares me and keeps me up a little bit at night because I've played against him too many times, and Z is going to have to capitalize on it right now.
Yeah, especially because the Amoonguss is off the field as well. You don't want to accidentally set up electric terrain and remove your opportunity to go for something like a Spore, but what's this? We have a Dynamax on the other side as well, and this time it is an Incineroar. Aaron opting to Dynamax that Incin, and we will see how everything kind of plays out here. I think this is really smart with just kind of the protect as well, just kind of bait out the fake out if Z's Incineroar decides to go for that, and it is the fake out into the Incineroar, so nothing is going to be flinched here.
That is a really tough turn for Z. I mean, I shouldn't have said anything about Dynamax Incineroar, but apparently it's on the field to play. But most importantly, it doesn't matter about the fake out speed tie or matchup at all, because you're Dynamax and you don't get flinched. You get to retaliate immediately with the max strike. And that's going to be really causing problems because Regieleki relies so much on its speed. Yes, it's not dealing huge damage, but you're controlling the speed in a new and unique way. I think a lot of people forget about that effect. And now that Regieleki, the Pokemon that's usually controlling the speed, is the one having the speed controlled on it.
Yeah, you can even see here that one speed drop was plenty for Zacian to be able to move first with its Behemoth Blade, doing double damage into this Dynamax Regieleki. Still not enough to get the knockout. And that's what's scary about this Return Max Lightning with the electric terrain active as well. And that Transistor ability, that is plenty to knock out this Zacian.
That is a very easy knockout for the Regieleki to take. Hanging on there, really important. This Incineroar just committing to the speed control angle. Really trying to make sure that it gets this Regieleki super manageable for whatever comes in afterwards to replace that fallen Zacian. I really, really like this. I mean, you can keep using it. Incineroar finally lands a parting shot as well. So Z able to pivot around as well a little bit, but he's going to have to reveal that before seeing Aaron's next Pokemon. That makes the decision a little bit harder. This Regieleki has one more turn of Dynamax, may just not be able to capitalize on it. The Zacian coming in, I really, really like to target down whatever the Regieleki isn't going to be able to outrun anymore.
Yeah, the Zacian choice coming in as well is perfect because Aaron has used Dynamax on that Incineroar. You're not necessarily so eager to just give that up and get those Intimidate cycles in, but Kyogre does come in to set the rain.
This gets tough if you're in Z's position. We talked about it at the top of the match. The Regieleki wants to be in front of the Kyogre, but I don't think at this juncture it needs to be in there, and it has to leave because you need to beat the Kyogre on speed with the speed drops. That's just not an option for the Regieleki. So a nice switch, and having Incineroar as the option, really, really nice. Just being able to say, you know what, I can switch this back in, I can land another Intimidate on your Incineroar, which it's not doing huge damage, but at least it's less damage that you're taking. And honestly, the Incineroar might just get bounced right back out after this attack. But then you get the Regieleki in at full speed again.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, is that Z did such a good job of rotating through their Pokemon in order to get rid of those speed drops from those max strikes. Unfortunately, Incineroar switching in is going to get knocked out to an Origin Pulse from this Kyogre in the rain, as Incineroar uses its last Dynamax attack to go for another max strike. And that means Zacian is at -1 in front of a Kyogre that are typically trained to be pretty fast.
Yeah. I'd like to point out that did do damage. I know it didn't look like it, but it did do a little bit of damage to the Zacian.
2 HP.
I barely saw the bar move. I was like, but the Regieleki's back in. To get back to the core point, the Regieleki is back in at full speed, and there's no more max strike available, no more speed control. So now, if you're Z, what they've got to do is use this Regieleki perfectly, right? Make sure that every turn you're landing a knockout. Only attack the Kyogre if it's leaving itself exposed to be hit. If the Regieleki attacks into a Protect here, I think the game swings very much in Aaron's favor, but no Protect. Kyogre's just taken down.
Yeah, that huge Thunderbolt there. It's a critical hit as well. And there goes the Kyogre, and this is it. Incineroar is the only one left, taking a very big attack, barely able to hang on, and does use Darkest Lariat to try to remove this Regieleki, which it will do, but it still has to deal with that Zacian in the rain.
Even with the speed drop, it doesn't matter. Zacian's still outrunning your Incineroar, and I think pretty safe to say that Zacian will be able to do the requisite amount of damage to push this game in Z's favor. I think they played it really, really well. I love that switch out of the Regieleki. It's such a tough thing to look at when you know it's your Dynamax Pokemon, you know it has access to max moves. To give that up before the final turn of it really does hurt a little bit as a player, but it was the essential move. The Regieleki had to be in at full speed, came back in and just did the job.
Yeah, that was a really expert class on pivoting around and making sure that the speed drops being given over from Aaron's max strike turns weren't going to be too problematic going into the end game, especially when it was down to that 2v2 scenario where that was all these players had left.
It was a tale of two Dynamax. The core turn of the game where they both Dynamax, there was just so much more damage coming out from the Max Lightning. Yes, the Max Lightning went one into a Protect, then one set up the terrain though, and then made sure to get the knockout on Zacian. The Max Strikes were important, but they don't stick if you switch out. And I think Z was in a position to just say, oh, well, once you showed me the Kyogre, I know I just need to be quicker than it, and then I can win the game. So really nicely done by them. I'd like to see an adaptation from Aaron. Maybe has to find a more reliable answer to the Regieleki, because apart from just dropping its speed, which took 2 turns to get it low enough, there didn't seem to be a solid answer to letting it just max lightning a couple things, or in Thunderbolt in the case of the Kyogre.
You had to kind of just risk it there a little bit as well. Maybe you're taking a little bit of damage from an Electro Web, or unfortunately you could get knocked out there, but protecting in that scenario is giving up a bit too much leverage.
The Kyogre did pretty well. You know, obviously took the knockout. It was doing its best, I think it's fair to say, but really smart by Z. I just want to call it out, protecting that Zacian in that Origin Pulse, because I think if the Origin Pulse hits, the Zacian's low, then the game changes. You get to play more of that mind game with, okay, well, you know, the Kyogre might protect, maybe Z goes after the partner Pokemon instead, the Incineroar, but that just didn't happen. Maybe that's what Aaron was banking on at the end there by leaving that Kyogre unprotected, just thinking, oh, well, there's no way that Z will think, I'm going to leave it, I may be able to weave in an Origin Pulse free of charge, but Aaron at the end does have to pay the bill for that one, and the bill is you losing your Kyogre after 1 turn.
But both of these trainers did such a good job of controlling speed to put it in their favor, especially just knowing how these Pokemon match up against each other in terms of which Pokemon is going to be able to move first. And, you know, I think Aaron did get a little bit unlucky there. You know, having the Whimsicott take so much damage, and then the paralysis kind of putting them in an awkward spot a bit of, you know, is my Whimsicott going to be able to do anything, I think is a little bit of bad luck in that case. But going into this game number 2, there are certainly adaptations that could be made. Maybe getting the Whimsicott out early in order to get the Tailwind. You also talked about maybe how Incineroar could have its Intimidates, do a little bit more against those physical threats on Z's team, but we are about to hop into this game number 2.
The Zacians were very differently played as well, and both trainers obviously want to land the Intimidate on it to get rid of the boost that it gets on the way in. But that just didn't happen from Aaron's side. He was throwing it out a little bit too early. Nice adaptation here. Nice to see the Evil Tile. And I think there's the change you were looking for. The Whimsicott right there in the lead next to the Kyogre. But this is not what Kyogre wants to see on the other side. That Regieleki, still very fast, forces the Whimsicott a little bit in how to play the game.
It's still a bit tricky, for sure. I mean, if Whimsicott is able to set up something like a Tailwind, then maybe Kyogre is, you know, Kyogre can strike first. It
has to set the Tailwind here, or else we're just going to have a run back of game number 1 where Regieleki, Thunderbolt, Kyogre's out, and that's a loss of restricted off turn 1. So Whimsicott sort of got its hands tied a little bit here in its decision making, because you've got to play around it. If you can get that Tailwind up, then you're in a solid position with the Kyogre to just start putting down huge damage with Origin Pulses, Water Spouts, all the good stuff really that Kyogre is well known for. So heading into turn 1, it's a Dynamax, which I really like from Z. They understand that they're about to take a lot of damage this turn. It could get very, very painful if you don't have an increased health bar to tank that. And in this case, it's the Evil Tile that's maybe going to be the focal point throughout the game for them. Just saying, okay, I'm going to take this hit really, really nicely, and then I'm going to fire back. Even if you set up the Tailwind, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, we will see the Tailwind, and Kyogre should be able to respond to this with an attack of its own. The Water Spout coming through, and it is going to drop that Regieleki to 1 HP. There's the Focus Sash to allow it to hang on. The Electro Webs now. Whimsicott is going to avoid it, but Kyogre is still going to be taking that super effective electric-type damage and getting its speed dropped. And so how does this Yveltal respond? A max Airstream to try to match the Tailwind that was set there, and even though Whimsicott avoided that damage, That is a good thing because it still has access to its focus sash, but let's see what happens in this turn 2.
I love this turn from Z. What they've done is seen that the Tailwind is coming. There's nothing you can do about it. It's going to happen. It's a prankster Pokemon. And what they've done so wisely is immediately counteracted it while laying down huge damage as well. A speed drop from Electro Web, a speed up from Max Airstream, and you're right back to where we started in the previous turn. So nicely done. Obviously, you would have wanted to land a little bit of the Electro Web over onto Whimsicott, but I don't know if that was the focus of this one. I like Electro Web. Yes, the Thunderbolt looks really tempting onto Kyogre, but really playing around that speed, understanding what the Whimsicott was doing, and responding really, really wise. And this Kyogre knows it's got a Dynamax to be able to take some hits here.
I really like this Dynamax from Aaron just to be able to put out some pressure. As Regieleki goes for the Protect, a max move into that Regieleki would still be able to drop it, but also Cotton Spore getting revealed here, which would have dropped its speed even further. Max Flare now coming out into the Whimsicott. Since that Cotton Spore didn't work, that is going to be the last move from this Whimsicott as it does get knocked out, and Yveltal has reset the weather now.
Super nicely done in that turn from Z, identifying that Aaron was going to look at their Regieleki as the threat and just say, you know what, I'm going to control its speed. The Regieleki is, of course, going to get hit through the Protect, but it was a nice idea. I think I have to call that out. But, you know, no change to what the Yveltal is doing. Just being able to limit the damage. Maybe if the Max Geyser was heading towards the Yveltal, it would have taken it a bit better. But the Yveltal probably feeling pretty good. Can't get Cotton Spored as well because of the Dark typing and the Prankster, so really neatly done. And this Yveltal seems to be feeling pretty good. Taylor 2 Zacian here as they both take the field at the same time. I would imagine that the trainers have their Incineroars with them, and this could get interesting depending on who decides to switch first. But that turn really good for Aaron too. Finally getting rid of the Regieleki, and that's why the Dynamax was essential. You said you really liked it, and I think that's why.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how these Zacian match up against each other if they do decide to stick on the field and go for attacks. But this is a really interesting scenario because we can see, yeah, the Zacian under those Tailwind conditions, it's not going to matter the base speed of these Pokemon or how they're trained. The Beamit Blade is going to go first, knocking out the Yveltal before it could potentially go for a Max Flare and do some damage to the Zacian and reset the weather. What does this look like on the return, though?
Well, the Zacian on Z's side is in a really rough position. They're going second, just because none of the stat changes are in play on the Zacian. The Behemoth Blade into the Kyogre, just not enough either to get the knockout. So this game very quickly spun in Aaron's favor because his speed control is persisting from the Tailwind, and these was so dependent to those early couple turns. Just gets to fire back, and game 3 is very much on the way.
Yeah, one final Pokemon for Z until this game is wrapped up, and it is the Incineroar in the back. Definitely not the conditions you would want to see this Incineroar in, under the rain, in the face of a Dynamax Kyogre. You do get the attack drop onto the Zacian, but both of these Pokemon are going to be able to knock out the Incineroar.
The speed control at the beginning was so nicely done, but it's now just not a factor. The Zacian's able to capitalize, and really this game is sending us to game 3. We asked for it at the beginning of the game, at the set rather, and it looks like we're getting it. Really nicely done from Aaron. I think Z did a fantastic job in the early turns, but just wasn't able to fire back. Like the Regieleki protecting, I like the idea, and you had to respect the potential Cotton Spore coming through, but you were just going to get knocked out anyway, so it really didn't make a difference, and seeing that Regieleki not have the impact made it a little bit tougher.
Regieleki not Dynamaxing there as well was very smart. I do think that the Yveltal gave Z a little bit more staying power. If the speed control from the Electro Web and that Max Airstream were able to stick.
You have to, I think you have to go Yveltal as the Dynamax there, just so you can get access to Max Airstream, but you need those Pokemon on the board to stay there for a while, and whatever happens, the Pokemon that come in from the back still capitalizing on the Tailwind. Very strange to see the Yveltal going after the Whimsicott over the Kyogre. Yes, the Whimsicott is annoying. Yes, the Whimsicott has access to Cotton Spore, but the Evil Tile wasn't threatened by that at all. We saw the interaction in Flow. Prankster into a Dark type doesn't work. So Evil Tile was always going to be able to hold on to its speed, where the Regieleki was not. Leaving the Kyogre alone, yes, you got to change the weather, but would just more damage on the Kyogre have been better in the long run, because then that huge damage threat under a Tailwind would have been taken away.
Depends. Maybe there could have been a max guard there. You never know what's really going through the players' heads when they are taking a look at each individual turn. And it's not even just about what do I do this turn, right? It's also how do I put myself in the best position moving forward to play out throughout the mid game and the late game. But it is time for game number 3 and the conclusion of this top 8 set. Adam, you said you wanted 3 games, and 3 games we are getting.
Yep, I spoke it into existence. I spoke in the 3 games, and I also called out and made Dynamax Incineroar happen. It was all me, not Aaron. Back to the game 1 lead, though, for Z. They saw that did a little bit better. That's the game that they won. And a change up from Aaron, the Whimsicott and the Incineroar this time.
I like this. I think that there isn't a whole lot of offensive pressure here, except from the Incineroar. The Incineroar being able to deal with the Amoonguss is a really, really good position to be in. Amoonguss can be such a tricky Pokemon to play around because it does have access to Rage Powder for redirection. Z does have an opportunity here to go for something like a Dynamax Regieleki, but also what about this Whimsicott?
This Whimsicott can really help out, and if you're trying to remove the Amoonguss early doors, a helping hand and a Flare Blitz together could be really nice. I'd maybe even consider skipping the Fake Out turn just to get that going and get that Pokemon advantage early on. I'm looking to see what the Regieleki does, and I quite like that. Saving it for the Kyogre, knowing about the threats that it could be facing. Nice and safe, get your Incineroar back in. This isn't in a restricted format. It's nice to see the board without them for a second or two.
Yeah, but the Incineroar coming in here for the Intimidate as well. A big Protect coming out from the Amoonguss in case Aaron did decide to target that slot. It is a Fake Out, and let's see what this Whimsicott is going to be able to do as well. It's just going to be a standard Tailwind here to kick off the speed control in Aaron's favor.
Tailwind for free, really, and nothing you can do about it. There's no way to stop it, and there's no way to immediately counteract it on Z's board. But they have put themselves in a position to completely slow down Aaron this turn. We've been looking at Incineroar to deal with Amoonguss. Well, the Incineroar on Z's side is able to fake it out this turn, unless, of course, it decides to Dynamax again. But that's an option, and maybe that forces the Dynamax from Aaron. If getting rid of this Amoonguss is a priority, that's something that he's going to have to do to land a Max Flare, for example. But overall, the Whimsicott, once it's set the Tailwind, really limited in the options. You've got the Tailwind, you probably don't need to Cotton Spore at any point in this game, maybe if you're worried about it, but the Incineroar just leaving, yeah, you need some new damage, and now that Regieleki's gone, maybe this is time for Kyogre to shine.
Kyogre now switching in. Let's see if there is a Fake Out, where it's going to go. But it's just a Dynamax here.
Yeah, there's a nice early Dynamax coming through. I didn't think any of the candidates on the board were looking quite likely for it. And that was not the one. That was probably bottom of Dynamax candidates on the board at the start of this turn. And now Aaron is putting a lot of faith in this Whimsicott.
No, I mean, hey, the Fake Out is going into the Whimsicott here, and Whimsicott going for a Max Starfall right into the Amoonguss just to try to get some damage onto it, and also set the terrain here.
Yeah, control that terrain. Make sure that you're not going to be struggling with any of those effects like this one.
Spore coming through.
Kyogre has got in absolutely free of charge there. I love Aaron's non-conventional Dynamaxing. This has got me so excited. The Whimsicott knows it can control the terrain. What's the big thing Amoonguss does? It puts things to sleep. Let's set up the terrain. Let's set up the ability to just bring Pokemon in on the ground and not deal with that huge turn from Aaron. And going forward, I mean, this Kyogre really not threatened right now. It's not going to sleep, and it's got spread moves to not worry about redirection. And Incineroar doesn't like Kyogre. It's that simple. It's also under a Tailwind.
Wow, let's take a look at that. It was just to set the terrain. Aaron is switching out the Whimsicott here to be able to bring in something else. Zacian now entering onto the field under these Tailwind conditions. And Z is in a bit of a pickle. You can't really switch out the Incineroar here. Something is going to have to take a ton of damage from this full power water spout, and it's going to be bringing Amoonguss to half and knocking out the Incineroar.
They've really fallen behind the pace. The Amoonguss just not able to really put in the work. We'll see how much the Seed Bomb does, though. Not enough to really threaten it, but it does take away the water spout. Huge damage in this turn. Really smart from Aaron to identify that in that turn, Whimsicott was done. Whimsicott had done its job. It set up the Tailwind, it set up the terrain. You don't need to leave it in. Yes, the Max Starfall can do some damage, but it's really not important. Get that Zacian in, get that Zacian in under the Tailwind as well, because that, of course, isn't going to be running for the whole game. And just capitalize on it. You know, even something like the Regieleki can't compete when Pokemon are being boosted that much. The Regieleki is going to have to spend time potentially electro-webbing here. You know, but to electro-web, you got to take hits. And Regieleki not known for its bulk. I think Aaron's put himself in such a good position with that one-turn Dynamax.
Really, really stand out, and then you also preserve the Whimsicott for later when your Tailwind does eventually expire, which could be incredibly beneficial against this Regieleki. But Regieleki don't think they're taking any chances right now. Z going to Dynamax it and make sure that some damage is going to be able to land on these Pokemon, and also potentially change the terrain around as well so that Misty Terrain is no longer active. But let's see what happens.
Well, what's he going to do? Change it to electric terrain and still be unable to use Spore?
I mean...
It's really not a premium choice here if you're Z. Yes, you can get control of it, but it's not like Aaron's capitalizing on it for more than the defensive status. Really nice read there. Knowing the Regieleki, I mean, you'd probably be able to play it anyway, but doesn't matter. Kyogre just gets to Water Spout again, even after the Seed Bomb. That's enough to wrap up that Regieleki, and the Dynamaxes have been short in this game, but Aaron's is a lot more impactful than Z's.
Yeah, the Seed Bomb going to connect onto the Zacian this time around. Maybe thinking a Protect might come through, but now the Tailwind is expired, but the big speed threat in the Regieleki is gone.
I don't think you even need the Tailwind anymore, just because the Pokemon advantage is completely in Aaron's favor. You know, he's up 4 Pokemon to 2, and Z, they're relying so heavily on this Zacian, just throwing in the towel, knowing that 4 to 2 with only 1 damage dealer was not going to be the way through the game. Big win for Aaron.